Hi, and welcome back. I have Eduardo Sanchez here again, so thank you for being with us yet again.
Sure.
So we're now going into, we obviously did the commentary, which you should already have checked out, but if not, the link is below, for the making of the Blair Witch Project. Now we're going into the general lore of the movie. So, first off, when this came out and Artisan bought it, there's been multiple people have talked about how there was a concern, or at least talking about reshooting it with traditional actors. So I don't know how true that was, if that was just a thought they had briefly. But if you had to cast the movie in 1999, who would you have recast it with?
Wow. That's a tough one.
I'm starting off with a heavy hitter here.
Yeah, for the woman, especially in that time, because I don't know, and I know that she was around that time because she did Phantom Menace, but I think Natalie Portman would have been a great
Yeah.
Heather. She's a small woman, but I think she's really, powerful. Um, God, for the guys, there's so many good actors out there, and it's so hard to like think of any of this. It's so hard to think of Heather not being Heather, Mike, and Josh. But I
Yeah.
think let's see, what actors were around that time. And Natalie Portman. The only way I know that is because I'm a big Star Wars fan, as you can see, and I know that she was around the right age
Yeah.
at that time. Um, but for guys, there's so many great young actors. I think somebody like Jared Leto would have been interesting. He was around at that time. I
Yeah.
think for one of the guys, for either maybe Josh. Um, it's weird. It's a weird exercise, but yeah, there's a lot of great actors, and I think that it would have been cool to experiment with somebody that had more of a name for
Yeah.
themselves, because the whole thing about Blair Witch was that everybody was unknown, so you could believe that it was a real footage. It would have been a complete different thing if we were casting regular actors, but the thought of remaking it really never materialized. I think like because Artisan was like it was kind of the perfect film for Artisan. They really loved the
Yeah.
idea of like taking this little movie that wasn't supposed to be wasn't really supposed to do anything and kind of making it blow up like they did. Um, but yeah, it would have been interesting to reshoot it. But yeah, it's like it's almost kind of. Really, the 2016 version is almost the has a lot of elements from the original. It's almost can
Yeah.
be like it's almost like a reboot. um, but it's just crazy because like would it have been handheld, like like what kind of conventional movie are we talking about? Is it found footage, or do we want to do like a normal, like a conventional movie? So
Yeah.
um, it's
Well,
an
I'm glad we
interesting.
didn't do that. I love
Yes,
this
I'm glad
movie.
they
Yeah.
didn't do that. They didn't force us to do that either.
Yeah, for me, my personal choices were Soleil Moon Frye for Heather, Skeet Ulrich. I really liked him in Scream for
Oh
Josh,
yeah.
and then because he had just burned all of his bridges with Home Improvement, why not Jonathan Taylor Thomas for Mike? It would have been
Yeah.
perfect. Um,
Yeah, you're right.
yeah,
Yeah.
I was also thinking the cast of Boy Meets World, but that was still filming at the time. I don't know
Yeah.
why that always popped into my head. They did do a horror parody. They made fun of. They had a Halloween episode that they did parodies of horror movies. So maybe they should have, if they stuck around one more season, they could have done Blair
Blair
Witch.
Witch. Yeah, that would have been cool.
Yeah. Well, and that actually leads into the next thing is this movie is obviously very iconic, and it's been parodied to hell across so many. They did the Blair thumb, that weird thing Steve Odenkirk was doing, where he would just superimpose faces on thumbs and reenact movies.
Yeah.
Mad Magazine. I saw like a clip where you said you loved seeing like you in Mad Magazine. They had
Oh, that was
caricature.
awesome.
Yeah, they had a caricature of you and Daniel there. Um, the craziest one for me was, have you ever heard of the Scooby Doo Project?
Yes.
Yeah, I remember that because I was a little kid when this came out, so I had no idea what the hell like this was. Like I'm like, what? Wait, why are they live in live action world? Why is Shaggy in the corner? And now relearning about it years later, I'm like, Wow, a few months after this movie came out, Cartoon Network executives were like, let's do a parody of a hard R horror movie that has, according to that right wing Christian group you mentioned, the commentary has 150 F bombs in it. And Cartoon
Yeah.
Network's like, yep, we're going to have the Scooby Doo gang reenact Blair Witch Project.
Like these woods don't look like our regular woods. They look different. Things just look more realistic.
Fred, give me the map.
I don't have the map. I gave it to you.
I distinctly remember giving you the map.
And I gave it back. Like I ate it, man. Scooby and I ate it. With Tabasco.
Yeah, Rabasco.
It was like useless anyway.
Shaggy, what are you doing in the corner?
I'm scared, man. Like scared.
It made total sense, man.
Well, and that year they were promoting, that was the year the movie Scooby Doo and the Witch's Ghost, which we did a commentary track, link below. So it worked out perfectly. They're doing a witch movie that year, so I guess it works. And it's great. I mean, it's very interesting how they made it. So
Yeah, no, I mean, and and like I love those things. I mean, I remember like people, like we would get VHS tapes all the time at Hacks and at our offices with people just sending us their parodies. And um, there was like the one I remember is like it was called the Blair Mall Project, where like people were lost out in the woods of the mall and they ended up in the mall, and it was like just complete comedy. But I love the idea that like it was such a simple movie to parody that people were just kind of inspired to go out and let's fuck around and make fun of it or whatever.
yeah,
And it was just like for me it was like like the scenes in Scary Movie where they parody it, or I mean yeah, Scary Movie, right?
yeah, I believe it's the first scary movie.
Yeah. And the stuff on Saturday Night Live, and the Chris Rock, the MTV movie awards, like the parodies of that. I mean, it was all just like, and then especially Scooby Doo. Like I just, like again, like I said earlier in the commentary, like I never thought one of a film that I made would have that kind of reach. So we all kind of just sat back and enjoyed it. And like I said, I love the Mad Magazine parody, and I mean I love them all. Even like there's some that were, I think sometimes people get mean spirited. Even that, like for me, it's like what am I supposed to be angry about? I had this really successful film and people are making fun of it. Boo hoo. So I loved it. I thought it was probably my favorite parts of Blair Witch in general.
Yeah. Now, next up is I have is about all the extended lore. So obviously, you guys were creating. You came up with Rustin Parr, Eileen Treacle, Robin Weaver, and all that.
Yeah.
So obviously, though, the well got tapped kind of quickly as they're like, oh, we got to keep producing more stuff. So then you had the Great Burkittsville 7 mockumentary that I mean I describe it's making a murderer essentially, or
Yeah.
like it's an interesting idea. People should look it up. It's essentially a documentary that doesn't even entertain the idea that the Blair Witch is real. They're just looking at, hey, this guy in the 40s was crazy and said a witch made him kill all these kids. That's weird. Let's look into like the actual case behind it. I mean, it'd be like a documentary about the son of Sam. Like you won't entertain the idea that a dog was really influencing him.
Yeah.
Um, Now, I mentioned in the commentary the Oni comics. Have you ever read those?
Yes. Yeah. I think I've pretty much read everything.
Okay.
Except like there's like some young adult novels, right? I haven't read those.
Yeah, those were like Heather's cousin was
Yeah,
investigating.
but I mean, the original ones, like the Oni Press ones, like the black and white ones, actually still have, like, I bought a couple of the original panels.
Yeah.
When they asked, they were like, "Hey, can we, you guys want to buy these panels?" And we were like, "Yeah, I want them." And I had them framed. They're in my screening room. But, dude, I mean, I was so excited. I mean, I because like to me they were like the perfect little stories, and I love the idea that and we laid out kind of the storyline, on some of them, because for me, and I think for all of us in the Blair Witch world, like we love the idea of like fan made fiction and like kind of the mythology kind of growing. And the mythology, other than like the distinct kind of like the the provable kind of, you know, documentation of like Rustin Parr was here, you know, he killed these kids, this, you know, everything else for us was, you know, that the kids disappeared in 1994, whatever. All these things are kind of like etched, you know, like they're parts, you know, markers in timeline. Other than that, like I always felt like I love the idea that people kind of make up their own theories about what happened in the original movie, what happened, you know, afterwards, um, and I especially love them people going back and like revisiting the original mythology, because those were just kind of like, for us it was just, there were just stories that were kind of told, you know, from generation to generation, you know,
Yeah.
until somebody, you know, actually wrote them down. So for me, it's like there's so much wiggle room, you know, and I like, and that's what I loved about the 2016 film, is that it definitely, you know, takes our original idea and then kind of pumps steroids into it, and then, you know, goes, you know, especially with the mythology and stuff, goes a lot further than we did. And from us, it's like all that stuff is applicable, you know, like for me, like anything that happens in that Blair in the woods there can happen, you know, there are no rules. And I especially like other people coming in and kind of you know, putting their efforts into building up the story that you know, Dan and I and Greg and Ben and, you know, back in the day we invented, you know. um but so the comic books for me were just so cool. I mean, just the different artists, the different styles, and we had a little bit of input, but at the same time we wanted people to kind of, you know, we wanted to see stuff beyond what we were kind of coming up with. The same thing with the dossier with Dave Stern, I think, the
Yeah,
artist of
that
the
sounds right.
Gotham. um, you know, we had a few meetings with them, but with him, and, you know, talking through. He asked a lot of questions and this and that, but in the end, you know, you know, we didn't know his writing. Actually, we had actually read a book of his and we loved it, before Blair Witch. They sent us before he wrote it, and we were just like, okay, this guy gets it. He gets the whole kind of, you know, fake reality of it all, and you know, so we just let, you know, we let him go, and we let, you know, we just let them go, and we love all the stuff, and even if stuff contradicts, you know, other things, to me it doesn't matter. Like, to me, that, you know, it's something supernatural, and to me, like, there's no explanation for what the Blair Witch is. I think the Blair Witch has been there for a long time. Like, I love to do stories about like Native Americans running into this
Yeah.
area in the woods, um, you know, or whatever the hell was before the Native Americans, you know. So to me, it's like there's so much, there's a lot of history there, and none of it is really official. You know, to
Yeah.
me, it's like, as long as you kind of keep the gist of the original idea, I think you can kind of play. You know, it's a big playground. You know.
The one story, The Offering, which was about like the family that had moved to Burkittsville in like the early 1900s. The framing device is several modern day townspeople are telling the story, but they all remember it slightly different. So like, oh no, this happened, and like it, you know, it's interesting because it's like, yeah, you know, you could say, well, none of this was mentioned in the original movie. It's like, well, because Heather, Josh, and Mike ran into three people, two of which who wanted to talk about Rustin Parr, and then, you know, the others only had like slight things. So it's like you could imagine like this is a big thing in the community that some people are like, oh, I like that story, or I'm going to talk about this one, or, you know, the Rustin Parr. So I mean, it all works with me, and even like you said, even if it's technically contradicts, it's urban legend meets supernatural, so it all like works perfectly.
Yeah, yeah, I agree with you, man.
Yeah.
I don't, you know, I think that, you know, for me, as long as like the artists and the writers are doing things for the right reasons, and, you know, coming at it from a place of like respect, I think, you know, they can go in any direction they want.
Yeah. Now, moving into the sequels, we all know the true sequel to this is The Four Corners of Fear. That's the only one that,
That's right.
yeah.
Yeah, exactly.
It's a criminally underrated web series. I will put the link below. It's a great parody of like all of the, you know, you, Josh, Mike, several of the other crew members, and then Tom Cruise in the woods trying to make a sequel, and
Yeah.
it's great. I love it. So who came up with that idea of like just randomly you guys filming in your backyard?
It was, I think Mike Williams, like we're always looking to do something together. And he met Evan Ferrante, who is the guy who plays Tom Cruise. And he's like, hey, have you seen this guy? And I had seen Evan in, other little Tom Cruise videos. And he's like, hey man, I met this guy in New York and he seems cool. And, he was, he was geeking out about Blair Witch. And I guess at that point he was like, imagine, doing a movie where, he would love to do something Blair Witch with us or whatever. And I don't know where the idea came from. Maybe it might have been Mike or Evan or whatever, but the idea of like, Blair Witch 3, another Blair Witch movie with Tom Cruise as the star is just so ridiculous. Like that's, so from there, immediately I was like, oh my God, yeah, that would be great. That would be so funny. And then we got, we got Josh involved, and Josh was like, yeah, if you guys fly me out, I'll, come out and do it. And Dan Karcher, who kind of runs he's kind of like the Blair Witch philosopher, like the Blair Witch archivist, the Blair Witch Yoda, I guess you could call him. He, he helped us out, and we figured out a weekend we were going to shoot it here in my backyard, and there's an abandoned house up here that we shot in, and we all just kind of made it up as we went along, and it was so much fun, man. And it was just we hadn't worked together in a long time, and it was just really kind of cool to get back together and kind of reconnect, and it made me miss working with those guys. And it was just, my kids got involved. It was just kind of a fun little thing that we did. And hopefully, more people will check it out. But, we've gotten such great reaction from it. It was just kind of the little thing that we wanted to put out there and have a little fun with it. But, otherwise it was, it was just for fun, man. And it definitely, it definitely feels that way when you watch it. It's definitely completely out of control.
Yeah, well, that's the thing. I mean, you all are like, really great at acting as like buffoon versions of yourself. Like, yeah, I know Mike has like a line. He's like, "Wait, you're getting like we're getting paid?" Like, like they're like he's doing a joke like that. Josh is just kind of like the closest to the sanest person there, and then like you're like in an alien costume, like saying you have to like go to the bathroom and like. It's just all insanity, and like you could tell you guys had a lot of fun making it, and it's just very joyful to watch.
It's a very scary costume, right? Most people are afraid of that.
Yeah, let's do
It's a scary costume, but I got to admit, it's a bit over the top, don't you think?
Dan,
No, because aliens are linked into the mysteries of the BW of.
and if you see any
of Heather.
imperfections in the outfit,
Heather's
that'll
the
all be
witch.
CG.
The audience will form their own conclusion.
Karcher,
Yeah.
you just can't get the back. I'm really ready to quit.
This is it, man. This is the fourth
Look,
corner of
look,
fear,
guys.
so let's
Look,
just get it
hey,
done.
I've had. I mean, look. I love you guys, okay? But I've had enough of your shit about fucking doubting my vision.
Right.
Okay? I'm gonna fucking do this scene. If
Right.
you don't want to be in it, I'll do it with Tom.
Yeah, no, it was great, man. It was, it's just such a stupid idea. And Evan has like such a grasp on the, Tom Cruise character, like who Tom Cruise would be. It was just great, man. It was, and Josh, he had brought in like the LA angle, like what are we doing here, and Mike and I were just kind of like happy to be doing something. It was fun, man. It was a good time.
Yeah. So, and then moving on to actual sequels. So Book of Shadows came out like 48 hours after the original one came out. They rushed that in.
Yeah, immediately.
So, and I watched the movie last week to like just like get into the mindset of like, okay, what's like the lore of this, and yeah, they like really like bashed the original one relentlessly. So was there like a little bit of, like you and Daniel, like were you guys a little upset? It's like, hey, we just made you $250 million and you're putting out a movie that's like 90 minutes of mocking the actors, mocking the look of the movie, mocking the writing. Like sometimes it's like it's in good fun that it feels realistic that people would make fun of it, but it's like it felt like a little at times like, oh wow, they're being mean.
Yeah, I mean, I never felt that way. I felt like, because like I mean, there's other ways that I feel about the movie, but I never felt like it was I know those aspects of it, but I never took it personally.
Okay.
I was just, there were so many mistakes made on that film, like just preconceptually, and like even for us, like, we, not that we could have done anything about it, but maybe if we would have fought harder. But at the same time, we were like, you have to look at the situation. Like we had just made a ton of money on Blair Witch. I was completely burnt, and Dan was the same way. We were completely burned out on horror. So the idea of making another, horror movie was just like, I didn't want to go there. For a while, it took me like years before I felt like the energy to do another horror movie. Because Blair Witch was like a dark movie, and it was like, really handmade, and it was 3 years of like constant like dark thoughts about, scary scenes and, child murders and like, just curses and I felt like there was, I needed to get out of that energy, so we were like not interested in making another Blair movie for a while. And Artisan was, they were headed down that road and we couldn't stop them. And we were kind of like, well, we'll give you our blessings. And we try to be as involved as we could. We tried to be as proactive, as productive as far as like giving notes and, telling, trying to guide them and trying to be, team players. But they pretty much stopped listening to us when we told them that we didn't like the script.
Yeah.
Like, we were like, this is not a good script. And they were like, well, we're going to do it. And also, I mean, look, part of it also was that we really loved Joe Berlinger, like we loved his documentaries. So we were like, if anybody is going to be able to like, do something cool, it's going to be this guy, it's going to be Joe, because he comes from a documentary background, and, he'll do something cool. I think he'll take what we're seeing. We're not seeing exactly. Basically, we're not seeing what he's seeing.
Yeah,
that's kind of But then the footage started coming in, and I started, I realized that there wasn't, that the vision was not matching what I thought it needed to be, and it just felt silly to me sometimes, Yeah. Well, and then they invited us on the set, and they were actually shooting in Maryland. I really wanted to go, but we made a decision to kind of distance ourselves from it as much as we could. Even though we were executive producers, they were paying us, the way that they were, they didn't really want our input. They wanted us to say, yeah, that's cool. Because anytime we kind of brought up challenges, they would like kind of brush us aside, really. So it wasn't like they were, acting like they were in the best, having the best. It wasn't a good collaboration at all. It never was.
And it's weird because, again, you made them $250 million. Like they would be like, okay,
we
what
made
you're
a lot
doing.
of money too. It wasn't like anybody was dying, was complaining about that.
Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. But they were a business, and they felt like they needed to make another movie right away, and we tried to talk them out of it, and they did. They didn't listen to us, and it is what it is. And in the movie we had offices at Disney at the time in Orlando, and in their kind of like pretend back lot. And they actually brought out a print of the movie. They showed it to us in this, the screening room at Disney, and we were like, it was just some marketing people from the Artisan, and it was. I mean, we were so arrogant, and I don't like talking about this because I felt it was really disrespectful, but we basically started like, mystery science theatering the movie within like 10 minutes.
Yeah. Well, I think the thing with the movie is
in front of the marketing people.
Oh, well, I didn't know that one. No.
And look, I mean, they weren't, I think they knew what they had. They knew they had already told us that there was some trouble, there were some problems with it, and they didn't know exactly what they were going to do, and they wanted our suggestions, you know.
Yeah.
And I think one of my suggestions was like, give us 3 months to rewrite the beginning, and let's make it like a parody movie, you know, like. You know, I said, you know, and I said it really seriously, and we were really, Dan and I were like really in comedy mode at that time, but because there was just some parts in the movie that were kind of comedic.
Yeah.
You know what I mean, and they weren't meant to be comedic, you know. And I don't think it's a terrible movie, but I just think it has nothing to do with our movie, you know.
Yeah, well, it's just the oddest sequel I've ever seen, because you would expect, like, if you're going to rush a sequel, it's like it's going to be another found footage movie, and it's like the only horror movie I can think that's close to this is because it's a deconstruction of the first one. It, like, the only movie I can even think that this is similar to is like Freddy's Dead: The Final Nightmare.
Yeah.
And you know, it's like, but that was like after like 7 other movies. It's like
that was after they had run the series into the ground,
So,
and they were
yeah.
just kind of like, let's experiment. Yeah, you know, but it was funny because when they hired like 3 different writers to, you know, to do a draft of the like a different story of the movie, and we were like, you know, originally we were like, no, we don't want to do a sequel, we want to do a prequel, you know, and they hired all these people and to write, you know, these sequel scripts, and I think I mean, you know, and again, I don't like talking bad about Book of Shadows because again, I don't think it was like a terrible movie, but I think that any of the other scripts that we read would have been a better match, a better sequel for Blair Witch than Book of Shadows, for sure.
Well, it makes me
Because
want.
at least those movies existed in the same world as Blair Witch, you know, as Blair Witch Project. Book of Shadows was like outside of the world that the movie, like, you know what I'm saying? It was a weird kind of, it was almost like Jaws 2 opening with like, you know, a line in the theater and going, oh man, Jaws 1 was great, wasn't it?
Yeah.
Hey, let's go to the movies. Let's go to the beach where they shot it and see what happens. And then they get attacked by a shark. You know, it was almost like that. Like, and it wasn't necessary, man. There was plenty of mythology there to, like, you know, to do a proper sequel or to do a, you know, go back in time and stuff. And, you know, they just, you know, again, the business side of things, took over and kind of ruined it.
Yeah, well, it's unfortunate because Berlinger had like some other ideas for it, and they you know, like forced him to cut it. They wanted to add in the whole subplot of like the, you know, cast murdering like the people in the woods and all that. Like, you know, that was the studio. Like, it's very clear he had a vision, maybe not the best for the immediate sequel after. Maybe that would be like, I feel like in a parallel world, the 2016 movie was made in 2000, and in 2016, Book of Shadows came out. Like, that's like the one where the franchise.
Yeah, you're right. It would have been made more sense. And also, I mean, you know, again, like the problem was that, you know, they didn't give them enough time. I mean, they were like, you know, and that's the main reason why we said no to a sequel was like, they came to us and they were like, all right, we're going to release another movie next Halloween. We're like, next Halloween?
It's August right now.
Yeah, that's like even closer. I mean, that was like, it was literally like 12 months. Like it was around the video release where they started telling us about the sequel. And it was, you know, it was just madness, man. It was just like, why? First of all, you know, like people don't remember that, you know, a lot of people don't remember that, you know, Blair Witch had like this huge opening. And it was like the critical darling and everybody loved it. But then once it started getting more mainstream, I think people started figuring out like, what the fuck is, like, there's a lot of people who should not have seen Blair Witch. You know what I mean? Like there was a lot of people who were like, you know, their idea of a horror movie was Friday the 13th or, you know, Nightmare on Elm Street, which is fine because that's what the popular movies were at that time. I mean, that's just what it is. But I don't think people were ready. A lot of people weren't not ready for a shaky handheld video that they were expecting, you know, that they were expecting to be sold as a movie, as a motion picture. You know what I mean? Like when you go to the theater, you want something that looks good, and you don't, you know, there wasn't this. So I think that so long story short, you know, there was a lot of people that hated the movie, at the, once it started like making a ton of money, people were like, what the hell is this? Nothing happens and you don't see anything. And for us, we realized that, like, we knew that we had a very little film. We never expected that this was going to have such mainstream, success. So we felt as filmmakers, like, let's back away from Blair Witch for a little while and let it like die down, let the hype die down, let the hatred kind of die down, and let people forget about it for a little bit. And then we'll come back in 2 years and come out with another, like a cool prequel or something that like people are not going to expect. But, business being what it is, the film business being what it is, it didn't work out that way, unfortunately.
And I mean, the Blair Witch is still around. Obviously, you had the 2016 movie, and then you had the recent video game, and the trailer for the final season of Supernatural has come out, and it's teasing, hey, there's the stick man in there. So
yeah,
I'm assuming, that's not just a coincidence, since you've directed several episodes of that there might be a connection. But
yeah, I mean, it's a very minimal connection, but there is a connection. Like, it does make sense. When we came down, we're like, because whenever I do a Supernatural episode, they're always like, let's put some Blair Witch stuff in there. And this time was like the only time where it like made specific story sense to have the symbol in there. And I'm honestly surprised that they kept it, man.
Yeah.
Like every time, like whenever I was shooting, I was like, they're gonna have to remove this. They're not, they're not gonna be able to like work out if there's any legal reasons or whatever that that we're using the stick man. But obviously they worked that out,
Yeah, so I'm excited to see that, whatever form that comes from, and then. It's just, big fan of your work. I didn't even realize it at the time. When I'm watching the VHS too, I'm like, wow, this really feels like Blair Witch Project. Oh, okay, watch the credits. Like, that makes sense. So, that
was a cool project to get involved with too, man.
And that's, I think, found footage is often maligned, and sometimes justifiably. There are plenty of, I think for every Blair Witch Project, or I really like the first Paranormal Activity. For every one of those, there's like a ton of crappy ones. But I mean, you obviously made a found footage movie with a GoPro on the movie's villain, or the segment's villain, essentially.
Yeah.
And it's like, that's like a very creative. So there's obviously stuff you can still do with not just found footage, but Blair Witch. So your sequel that you pitched, and I always liked the idea of doing a prequel. I mean, you could have been like the Witch, movie from a few years ago, like looking into
I mean, and that's really what, like, when I saw in fact, like, the Witch, like his films, the Witch, and then the Lighthouse, it's almost like he's picking my brain for film ideas, not directly, but because the Witch is probably the closest that anybody's ever come to like the actual prequel, even though it's not it's not what I imagined. It is very close. The sensibilities are there. And then the Lighthouse was another idea that I've been working on something similar. I mean, it's not the exact same, but I really like his films, and I like that where he goes with them. And I love the fact that his movies are successful, and he's able to make more movies like that, because it's just very rare, especially in the horror world. But yeah, man, it would have been. I mean, I like I said earlier, like I do. I'm always open to to being part of the Blair Witch world. Like I'm in contact with a few people at Lionsgate, and they kind of keep me abreast of what's going on. There's actually something coming on at the end of September. I don't know when this is going to air, but there's actually a new Blair Witch thing. I can't say what it is, but it's coming out at the end of September. It's not a movie. It's not a movie. It's not a TV show, but it is cool. And I think the real fans of Blair Witch are really going to love it. It's kind of the perfect, mechanism for a Blair Witch story. And and I'm helping with that. I'm helping them market that and stuff. And as far as TV shows, we've pitched a couple different Blair Witch TV shows. We'd love to do it again. But right now we have other things going on, and if they let us, I would love to go. I think Greg and I, who are the only partners left at Haxon that are working together, I think if they gave us a chance to come back and do something in Blair Witch, we would definitely jump on it. And also, to work back to work with Dan again, and you know, the other people that helped, that were instrumental in the first one. It would be nice. It'd be nice to go back and play with, you know, these friends in the playground that we helped create, you know?
Yeah, for sure. And you know, when I saw your tease on Facebook saying something was coming in September, I assumed that was like the reference to Supernatural. So the fact that we're getting another thing, and
No, the Supernatural thing is, I mean, I think October 8th, and like I said, it's a very small connection. It does make sense. But yeah, this other thing is going to be cool. I think people are going to love it.
yeah, well, and by the time this airs, because this will be coming out mid-October, hopefully, so the
It'll
people
been
who,
out already.
yeah,
So
they know before I do, I guess.
yeah, they give us the reaction to what it was.
Yeah, so I'm looking forward to it, and you know, again, you know, this is just one of my favorite horror movies, so it's been, you know, really great, you know, being able to connect with you. Very appreciative of that, and yeah, when I saw you like Eduardo Sánchez follow you, I'm like, like it like really like made my day. So, yeah. So all right, well, we'll wrap this up. So again, thank you for doing this with us. It was a lot of fun.
Yeah,
we should
man.
do this again.
Thanks for having me, and please invite me back.
Yeah, of course. We'd love to have you back anytime. All right. Have a good night, everybody.
Yeah, you too.